This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. Welcome to another edition of Maui Causes. Hi, I'm Sam Small. Eternal thanks to Todd Swan and Sleepy John in the control room, and to Akaku for existing in our community in the first place, to be able to bring you information and ideas that you may not be hearing in other places. The established business interests here in Hawaii and here on Maui really do assert themselves very heavily in our media because we have so little media. And so that's why Akaku and the access that Akaku affords our community is so very important, and why the powers that be have been for years trying to shut Akaku down. We need as a community to understand the value of open communications, even, just ideas that are different are important to hear. It needs to be part of the discussion. And that's what this show, Maui Causes, is dedicated to being a positive disruption to the status quo. It's a necessary ingredient in a free democracy because those economic forces at play do assert themselves to their advantage, which isn't necessarily to your advantage, to your children's advantage, nor to our delicate environment here in Maui County. And we are in, we're just coming out of the political season. Some folks didn't want us talking about some of the issues that we tend to talk about here on this show during the political election cycle because it's inconvenient for the candidates. The candidates were all told by political consultants not to address difficult topics during the campaign. Do not be controversial is what the political consultants told all of our local politicians. They tell that to all politicians, and our local ones got that message as well. We disagree. On this show, we invite the details. We invite the community to sweat the details with us because that's what's so important. If you just absorb a message, then you're being led by propaganda. And that propaganda comes from the powers that be because they've got the money to do that. In 2014, when this community initiated a public referendum to put on the ballot a law that would require Monsanto to do safety studies, different than what they do in the laboratory, they do in preparation for pushing their products through the regulatory system, because there they only test one chemical at a time, never in combination, and never are they really looking at the holistic application of adding those chemicals into an environment. Our environment, that's what they do. They put those chemicals in unknown combinations as part of open field experiments that the federal government apparently has authority over. You don't have authority over what is put into your environment, what your children are forced to breathe and drink in their water. You don't have control. You don't have control over the vaccines that your kids are going to be getting. There's public outcry over that, and we've had people on our show here who represent the concern for your informed consent. You deserve that informed consent before they inject 72 vaccines into your kids, changing perhaps forever your child's life. You deserve to have that consent. We deserve as a community to have these discussions. And we invite you to, spend some time and dive into some of these details because they are really critically important. The climate change as an issue. We're coming out of a political season. Some folks told us we shouldn't be dealing with issues. Well, so then the political season is over and it's time to deal with issues. But I'll tell you, it's a lot harder to get people's attention when there's not a campaign going on. When there's a campaign going on, they're very vulnerable and they actually pay attention to things if you talk about them, if you force them into it. That's the positive disruption that Maui Causes tries to represent. But now that we're out of the political season and we're headed, well, actually into a new set of primaries on the national level, looking back at the last set of primaries on the national level, the issue of climate change never came up. It just didn't come up. And that's got to change. And so the call for that information and for that dialogue to be a part of the coming election cycle is happening now. And you have an opportunity to educate yourself and you have an opportunity to get involved. And we're happy here on Maui Causes to bring to you once again Rita Ryan, who is just a local angel and has a willingness to dive into the details on a lot of this stuff. She's a member of 350.org, 350hawaii.org, which is an organization dedicated to letting you know and understand what is happening with these climate changes and the global ramifications and the local ramifications, because sea level rise is happening. It is going to affect us here in Maui County, and that needs to be part of our local dialogue when it comes to land development and land planning issues. So Rita, thank you for coming back. You were on our show last week and we had a wonderful talk, but never really got to some of the slides and educational content, so we're back. I've invited Rita to come back. And today we'll go through some more detailed information to give you an understanding of what the climate reality really is.
Great, thank you, Sam.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me again, to have me back 2 weeks in a row. It's kind of fun. Yeah, we didn't talk about all of the things that we wanted to, and I left the show feeling like I had not really talked about some of these. We talked about great things, but some of the other essential things. So what?
It's a very broad topic, and there's a lot of information that people need to hear.
And it's happening on a global level, a national level, a state level, and a local level. And that's where we really focus, is that on the local level, action is going to happen at the local level.
Right.
So what can we do here in Maui County to affect positive change?
Right.
And it's an urgent crisis, and we need to act swiftly. We need to accelerate the rapid rate of change that we need to go through. Maui County did great last year. I think we almost doubled our renewable energy capacity.
That's great.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
How did we do that?
How did we do that? I think we did that with solar and wind, right? We don't have many other clean or renewable energy.
Otherwise, a lot of our electricity is generated through the import of diesel fuel.
Diesel fuel, exactly. And we do use more diesel fuel per capita than other states, so they have other types of renewable.
People know that.
I know. We use it. Even I actually look at the data. You can look at the data online. How many barrels of oil we import into Maui County, and 30 to 40% of that is aviation fuel. Which is interesting. Well, of course,
the planes have to gas up.
They have to gas up to leave, and it takes fossil fuel to get the fossil fuel. We know the whole conversation. So anyway, and there's difficulty with aviation fuel, though, because we can't just turn it over to biofuel or renewable energy. We can do a mix we can mix, but the planes really need to be, the jets, retrofitted. And you know, some of these jets that we're traveling on were built, 40 years ago, right? So the rate of change, the accelerated rate of change needs to happen, and as a country, we need to get our arms around it. On the local level, we need to start doing what we can on this local level to do our part in our community to accelerate this rate of change. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, I think.
And there's an opportunity for, if you have an interest in these issues, there is an opportunity for you to get involved. We need here in Maui County motivated individuals who have a willingness to go out into the community and speak on these subjects. Go to the Rotary, go to the various different community meetings, with pamphlets and information, and be able to talk coherently and intelligently about these issues. The 350hawaii.org is an organization that Rita is one of the organizations that she's a part of, but that's what is growing to bring this messaging out locally. And so we invite you to go to that website and sign up. You can get the education, the media content that we'll see. Content is available to support you in those discussions. So if you have concern and you have a heart and a willingness to get involved, this is your invitation.
Right, and we have excellent, 350.org, we have excellent training references and resources, rather, to really get you up to speed on the issue, on the conversation. We have great partner organizations that we work with, such as Sunrise Movement, what we're going to talk about later, I think, in the program.
And that's a whole new wave. That's a whole new wave of young people getting involved in this issue. SunriseMovement.org. Is bringing life and dedicating itself to making sure that the dialogue changes, that this election cycle, climate change, and the reality of what we have to do to stop the warming and to bring carbon out of the environment, to bring carbon down. It's two things that we need to do. We need to stop the acceleration, which is still going on, and we need to remediate. We need to fix things a bit to bring these carbon levels back down to where we're not destroying ourselves. And that is a growing movement that we invite you to get involved in.
Right, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about that today as well, and the Green New Deal, which we were hearing a lot about in the news, the Green New Deal, and we have so many politicians, including our own Tulsi Gabbard, who has put in her hat for the presidential primaries, and she signed on to the Green New Deal. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to break it down for you, how what it covers, what it's about. It's not just about the environment, it's about the economy. So we're going to get into that a little bit more as well. And
the environment and the economy are inextricably linked.
Absolutely.
Because our economy has been based on exploiting the environment
fossil fuel
for so many years.
Right.
And we talk here on the show about hemp. And how our nation and much of the world has been exploited for over 80 years with removing hemp from our economy and from our diets, because that favored the oil and gas industry, that favored the cotton industry, that favored the paper industry, paper made from trees, because prior to the ban on hemp, paper was made from hemp. And we have an opportunity here in Maui County now with the Farm Bill that no longer considers hemp to be worse than heroin. 84 years, hemp was worse than heroin, they said. It was ludicrous to begin with, and it's insane that it went on as long as it did, but it's ended now, and we have an opportunity to bring a cash crop here into Hawaii, here into Maui, to grow hemp. And that's a continuing story that we'll have other shows on. But let's get into some of the educational material that you have through the Climate Reality Project.
Sure, okay, let's go. So I brought a few slides. As I mentioned earlier, I went through climate reality leadership training with Al Gore last year in Los Angeles. And Al Gore is very famous for his slide decks. If you've seen An Inconvenient Truth, or the second part of The Inconvenient Truth, he's got slide decks. So as a leader, we are privy to these slide decks. There are 500-600 slides in it. I won't bore you. No, it's not boring, actually. It's very exciting when Al Gore delivers it. But we've got a few slides here, and I just wanted to start with sort of, like, let's back up, high level, and many of us know that, but it's good to sort of review it and see, about greenhouse gases and learn about how this is changing our atmosphere and why we need to do something about it.
Great.
So, do we have those slides up there yet?
Yep, they are.
Okay, great.
I'm one ahead of you.
Oh, you're one ahead of me. Okay, great. So this photo is quite famous. It was taken in 1968, and this image really changed the way that we saw our planet, that we saw Earth, and people started looking at it like, wow, we're this little dot out there in the dark. We need to. It made the whole planet seem smaller than we've been perceiving it. And let's go now to the next slide. And there we see another view of it from 1972, and this one is famously called the Big Blue Marble. And 18 months after this photograph, Earth Day was created. The first Earth Day, the very first Earth Day, I think it was 1973. And so it's really was transformational in that it started changing our consciousness about this planet. And
that's how powerful an image can be. One image can do that. We've, images that it helped stem the tide, but also back in the 70s about the Vietnam War. There were photos that came out that absolutely influenced our society.
Yes, I know.
We have less of an opportunity, with our media barrage. We're constantly inundated with images.
Right now, but back then we weren't inundated.
Right.
In when I think it was Time magazine, was it, that put the pictures of the My Lai massacre in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And people started really waking up to what was happening there in Vietnam when they saw people in that village just, being massacred.
And today, when when we have images, of the polar ice caps melting,
right,
and starving polar bears,
right,
those images are important and people need to see those images to
right,
understand the impact of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard for people to understand what's going on without a really strong visual image. Because if you look up in, the sky is blue, the clouds are white. The atmosphere looks okay. If you're just a casual observer, you can't tell how many parts per million of carbon are in the atmosphere by just casually looking at it.
Right.
Here
on Maui County, you get to look at the shoreline.
Right.
And that the erosion that we're seeing in the shoreline, from local issues and also the sea level rise. Those are things that people can actually see.
Absolutely, yeah. Those are things but in the air, the greenhouse gases in the air, and that's going to take me to the next slide. Let's see, are we on slide number 5 there? Yeah.
I'm tracking right along.
Yeah, okay. So this is 1990, and we got, this is a satellite image by a robotic spacecraft, a satellite. And that was in 1990. And then the very next one, this is a really great image. I really like this one. So it really speaks to the atmosphere and global warming. And if you look at that little thin blue layer, it's like an eggshell around our planet, a very thin eggshell. And that's the atmosphere. Now,
that's very thin.
It's very thin. If you were to drive straight up to the outer limit of the atmosphere at, normal highway, what is normal?
60 miles an hour.
60 miles an hour.
National speed
you would
limit.
get to the end of the atmosphere in 5 or 10 minutes. That's how thin it is.
Right.
Yeah. It's not endless. It's not endless sky. It's very, very thin.
And that's why these greenhouse gases that have been accumulating, the carbon emissions being put into the environment are so problematic.
Exactly, exactly. So let's go just a little bit more on climate science. So we see here the solar radiation in the form of light waves going through the atmosphere. It's the infrared waves that cause heat. You know, the UV lights that burn us and that sort of thing. They're not the heat-producing light, but it's the infrared that is the heat-producing light.
That's why we have an infrared sauna these days. So
Right,
it's that same
right.
infrared technology.
So there's UV, and then there's the visible energy, and then there's the infrared energy. And the infrared is really the heat trapping waves. So what happens is they come into the atmosphere. Let's go to the next one. So most of the radiation is absorbed by the Earth and keeps us warm. We have to say, you know, we would be very cold if we didn't have our beautiful atmosphere insulating,
like Mars. Yes.
insulating us, right? So it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have. One of the greenhouse gases, there's carbon dioxide, there's methane, which is a carbon gas, nitrous oxide, and then there's water vapor. And what happens is, you have these light waves, and you have the infrared light waves. And the greenhouse gases, what they do is they block those infrared waves from bouncing off of the Earth and going back out into space. So we're trapping more energy than we're releasing, and thus we're getting global temperature increase across the planet. Right. So the average temperature of the planet, water and land combined, is about 58.5 degrees, I think it is. So any small change in the average, so now it's going to be different. The average is going to be different in Hawaii, of course, than it is in Alaska, right? But the global average, but any difference in temperature is going to have effects depending on where you are in the world. So some areas are actually feeling more warming and more effects than other areas, but you know, so it's
when it changes the wind patterns, the ocean temperatures help form the wind patterns, and they change one another. So as the water warms and moves around, the warm water in different places, the wind pattern changes, which changes the local climate that you have in California, where they're getting fires, where they're getting droughts.
But it's not. It's what I'm saying also is it's not equal in every area. Right. So if the temperature goes up, 1 degree Celsius, it's maybe 0.8 here and 1.2 over there. So right. This is the average. So we're talking in global averages here.
And we feel the effects of stuff like that, where, for instance, the trade winds have changed.
Right.
And we're not experiencing as much trade wind activity as we used to.
And the currents, as you mentioned, and the wind patterns. So this just shows see the 3 red arrows there? Mm-hmm. They show the energy radiated back into space, the infrared energy. And then if you look now at the 4th red line there, now some of them that should be going out are coming back in. It
bounces back.
So so the more we pollute that layer, it's air pollution. Basically, the more we pollute that layer, the more energy is going to get trapped back in, and it accelerates. Right. It accelerates itself. So,
and that's where the notion of 350, this notion of this demarcation line of 350 that Bill McKibben helped popularize with 350.org was it parts per million
of carbon in the atmosphere, which is easy to measure. We can't see it looking up there, but it's easy to measure.
And what happens after that 350? What has happened now after we've gone beyond?
We're well over 400. Right. I believe, and where they NOAA gets its statistics from is Mauna Lea Observatory over next door on the island of Hawaii. And I believe that the last reading was 417 parts per million. And that has accelerated quite rapidly. So we need to get it down below 350, right? So 350 put us into this age now of climate-related devastation. And we need to get it back down. It's easy to put it up, but not so easy to get it down. And what I was mentioning to you earlier is like, when you heat up a pot of water, when you take the heat off, the water doesn't suddenly, go back to room temperature.
Right, it radiates that heat out for a while.
It's very hot for a while. So it's even if we went to, carbon neutral tomorrow, we're still going to see the effects in the environment for quite some time.
Right.
So we don't want to accelerate that by putting any more carbon into our atmosphere.
And that's what we talked about in last week's show, is an initiative to just stop any new infrastructure development that is based on fossil fuel.
Here in Maui County,
call to action that any new infrastructure or energy projects that get initiated from today going forward shall not be based on fossil fuel.
Absolutely.
And that is, drawing a demarcation line so that it doesn't get any worse. But then we also have to be proactive in drawing the carbon that is in the environment. We need to do the things that draw that carbon back down.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with agriculture. Hemp does that, bamboo does that, beautifully.
Reforestation.
Any reforestation effort.
Yeah.
And, we're, in the Amazon, there's still tearing down forests.
Right.
They're still destroying the rainforest.
It's terrible. It's terrible what's happening there. Certainly we have deforestation here on Maui that we've done since the agricultural days of Maui, the early agricultural days of Maui. And there is some efforts at reforestation here. I think we can, put a little bit more effort into it. Now, fossil fuel comes from the ground. And that is concentrated carbon, right? And that's what makes the energy that fuels our diesel engines at MECO, and also, cars and that sort of thing. That carbon came out of the earth, right? And that carbon needs to go back down into the earth, right? We need to get it out of the atmosphere.
Right.
And the only thing that's going to do that is if we have carbon drawdown solutions to bring the carbon down at a faster rate than we're putting it out. Right? So we need to level this off, get down to 350 and below, and we're at 417 now. So, it's a lot, but we can do it because we're human beings, we have ingenuity, we have technology. We don't need any new technology than we already have today to complete this.
We just need to apply it, have the political will and the political dialogue so that people understand these issues and have a willingness to create the shift that we so desperately need.
Right. So ideally, we have balance in that we are, taking in energy and putting it out at the same rate. And we're not doing that right now. So this is really sort of a little shocking. The next slide, I don't know, So this one, look at 110 million tons of anthropogenic, that's what you're saying, man-made global warming pollution into the atmosphere every day. Every single day.
Man-made.
110 million tons of man-made greenhouse gas emissions, carbon. So it's hard to think on that scale. It's hard to think what is 110 million tons of carbon when I can't see it, you know? So, but it's going into our lungs, right? It's displacing, it's air pollution. It's air pollution.
This is on top of, here locally, this is on top of, the emissions that the volcanoes put out.
Oh, exactly.
Because that's a huge, actually a significant polluter.
It is.
Those gases. The
bomb. Asteroids. I think the asteroids wiped out the dinosaurs 60-some million years ago, and that created a climate crisis. That asteroid or asteroid shower. I'm not sure. I'm probably not qualified to talk on that, but it created a change in the climate, a very, very rapid change in the climate, so that the dinosaurs could no longer survive. So there was a mass extinction event, right? And we are
potentially headed towards that.
We're in it. Sam, I'm going to tell you,
Yeah.
we're in it. We're in the mass extinction event. We've got so many species. I think we talked about it in the last show. So many species that we've already lost, and we're looking at the species we're going to lose. The Hawaiian monk seal, polar bears. Maybe the whales. There's so many species going extinct, and we can no longer tolerate it, and we have to stop it, and we will.
Good.
So I wanted to get a couple more slides here.
Great.
And I think we talked about this a little bit already. Let's go on to the next one.
Right.
Yeah, some really exciting graphs and charts. Okay, so what this looks like is like a half a mountain, right? So the largest source of global warming is fossil fuels. So we're looking at man-made fossil fuels here, okay, and how they've risen from 1850. This one only goes up to 2016. Now you see at the very top on the right-hand side, it's kind of leveling out up there, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Very, very top.
Right.
So we want that to not go any higher and to come down. But how Al Gore describes it is as if you're seeing bunny slopes on this side if you were skiing down it. The other side has to look like double black diamond runs. If you're
We need to draw it down quickly.
A ski analogy, it has to go down very, very, very quickly.
Okay.
So there is an urgency to the problem. We don't have a lot of time left. I don't want to get into some of the what if negative aspects because I don't believe, I have faith in humanity. And I think that we're going to solve this problem.
Well, you don't want to freak people out, but people
No.
be freaked out.
Yeah.
This stuff needs to change.
Yeah, it's not, climate change isn't in the news because basically it's a ratings killer,
Well, yeah, sure.
So thank you for.
We don't have ratings, so
Exactly. Yeah, public
thus community
TV.
television. We're free
It's
to
wonderful.
be able to bring these issues, to you,
Right.
and that's the whole point. That's why we exist, because these kinds of discussions, these kinds of issues, don't really come up in our local media.
No.
And we invite you to support Maui Causes in our efforts to bring this kind of information to you. Please go to mauicauses.org. Take a look at what we've been doing now here in Maui County for years and look for ways to support us. We'll be back with Rita Ryan and more information on climate reality in just a minute. There's more to our show in just a moment. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. Welcome back. I'm here with Rita Ryan, and we are talking climate reality. Rita, thank you so much for the detailed information that you're bringing to our viewers.
Thank you, Sam.
We really appreciate it. Let's continue on.
Yeah, so the next slide, the 500,000 slide here, is another very alarming statistic. So anthropogenic, man-made global warming pollution is equivalent to 500,000, that's 500,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs per day, every single day of the year.
That's insane.
Of course it is. That's insane. So when we start looking at statistics in a different way and seeing these things, we wonder, well, who's in charge? Why is this happening? I didn't make this up, by the way. There's a.
No, these are part of the inconvenient truths.
Exactly. Thank you. That was very good. Very good. And so then another chart here. You can see how many days since 1880 we've had, or excuse me, how many years since 1880 we've had warmer than average years, judged by the global surface temperature. Okay, and so you'll see that red line, I think this one only goes up to 2017, the statistics on this, you see where we're going. Okay, so the next slide. 17 of the 18 hottest years on record have been since 2001. We're in 2019 now, okay? So that's really significant. That's an alarming number as well. So, and then we don't have statistics for 2018, but 2017 was the 41st consecutive year with global temperature above the 20th century average.
Wow.
20th century meaning 1900 to 2000. So that's a lot. It's trending in the wrong direction. We need to get it trending back in the right direction. That's some of the reality, anyway. That's some of the climate reality, and that's the bad news, right? But we want to talk about the good news, right?
Yes, we do like solutions. That's
we do,
what we try and bring.
exactly, and the solutions are all here. Now, one of the things that is really growing in momentum right now is you mentioned the Sunrise Movement.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sunrise Movement, I believe, was started by young voters, college students, and very young voters. Mm-hmm. Who have said enough is enough, this is our future. And out of that movement came the Green New Deal. And there's been a lot of talk about the Green New Deal. Anybody who is a political hopeful is attaching themselves to it. And I think we've got over 40 people in Congress right now. And Tulsi Gabbard has signed up,
this,
subscribed,
right?
put her name behind it. And the Green New Deal is a very holistic plan to get to our green economies, because right now we're in a fossil fuel economy, right? We need to move to a renewable energy economy. And so that's where the pushback comes, is, oh, it's going to destabilize our economy if we move away from fossil fuel, right? Well, renewable energy is a huge business too, and it would destabilize our economy if we moved away from renewable energies now. Okay,
right. And that's the typical argument. We had that argument here in Maui County about the sugarcane. That
right.
Oh my God, how would we ever make up for 600 jobs if sugarcane went away? Well, sugarcane went away, and we made up those jobs.
Right.
So that argument that the economy is going to falter just is not a reality.
Yeah.
It's going to shift. The economic authority and the economic power will shift from the oil and gas companies.
Right.
So their stranglehold and what they consider to be an entitlement may change, unless
Exactly.
of course they seamlessly transition into these other industries.
If they start investing,
do.
they can do.
There's certainly been enough warning of that. So it's not that the economy is going to die and that everything is going to go, down the tubes. No, the power and authority will shift. And the people that have the power and the authority today don't want that. We want that. You want that. Your children want that. That's the same story on the national level, on the international level, and on Maui County level. The authority has been held by people that are exploiting the status quo, and we need these shifts. We need young people and new, fresh ideas, transparency and accountability here on Maui County especially, to be able to make these changes. That's what we're desperately hoping comes to us. And
right.
This discussion is part of all that.
Right, and in fact, I've got some interesting factoids
Please.
About the Green New Deal, and it's a lot about job creation. So we had, as of last year anyway, we had 92,000 coal workers, and we had some politicians trying to protect their jobs. Well, there were 800,000 workers in renewable technology, and there were 2.25 million workers in energy efficiency. So what are we talking about here, right? The Green New Deal is going to it aims to create 10 million new jobs in 10 years, okay?
That's a lot of jobs, 10
It's
million.
a lot of jobs through employment training programs, government grants and projects, similar to how Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal during the Depression, it was an economic stimulus plan
Right.
to give people jobs and to get the economy going, right? We need to shift our economy off of a fossil fuel economy into a renewable energy economy without going through a Great Depression, right? So we're trying to be forward-looking and forward-thinking. It's not that far forward. It's like forward is tomorrow. So, so job creation is one of the big goals of the New Green Deal. And if the Green New Deal would like to spend 2% of our gross domestic product on this New Deal. So is it revolutionary? Yes, but the times call for something very revolutionary. We need to make change, shift the conversation and make the change quickly.
And that would be economic stimulus packages that would go to companies to help support the development of green products and energy producing that is not fossil fuel based.
Exactly.
And those kinds of, that is what the role of government is to be able to make the determination of where the society needs to go and find appropriate ways to support the industries and businesses that do that.
Right.
There's all kinds of subsidies that the oil and gas industry has been getting, tax benefits and all kinds of incentives that have been built into our existing system. So it's not like we don't have incentives.
Right.
We just need to shift where the incentives are, and that takes political will, and that takes young people in this environment, to get involved. And the Green New Deal and the sunrisemovement.org is an opportunity for your kids to get involved in and be working with other young people that have an understanding of these issues and have a willingness to put their time and considerable energies into making these changes.
Right, and even though it's sunrise movement, even us sunsetters are allowed in. I was on a call last week, and they thought that they'd get 100 or 200 people who were interested in the movement. They got 2,500 people on the call.
Oh wow! On a live call.
On a live
participating,
call.
Right?
Yeah. So that was interesting.
That's
so
great.
it tells you a little bit about the momentum. We're looking at a 10-year revolution, I guess you could call it. It's kind of like the civil rights movement, only it's the green energy movement. And justice for all, and we'll get into that, about justice and eliminating poverty. It has a lot of things writing on it. A lot of benefits of this plan. But if we look at 10 years ago, what's happened? Look at Apple. Look at these. Have changed our lives dramatically, right? Really, really changed our lives. Amazon.com, totally revolutionary, very disruptive in people's shopping habits. So we can do this because we have adapted to new technologies so quickly in this country and even around the world that adapting to green energy technologies,
not going to be a problem.
it's not going to be a problem.
No, the only problem is the politics that are keeping things entrenched.
Exactly, and that's why we have to work not just on a national level like the Sunrise Movement is, and looking at the presidential primaries and getting
we have
the
to
subject.
Control the message. We have to change the dialogue.
But at the local level, we need our own version of the Green New Deal at the local level. We're not going to wait for the 2020 election and then somebody to come into power in 2021. And who knows what the makeup of Congress and the Senate is going to look like? We don't know. We don't know how effective or ineffective they're going to be. Barack Obama had the stimulus plan, I think the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, which is very, very similar to the Green New Deal in many ways. There was strong pushback on that. It wasn't out long enough to get proselytized. So when the vote came in, I think everybody was afraid that this is too much too soon. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now I just want to go through some of the points in the Green New Deal. So it prioritizes justice and equality, and that's really, really important because people of color are discriminated against in climate reality.
Sure.
Because they're living next to the brownfields, they're in the urban areas breathing the polluted air. They don't have access to the water quality that we may have.
You can call it environmental racism.
Yes.
It's a thing.
It is a thing.
It is a real thing.
It is a thing. It is a thing. Yeah. So that's important. I have an electric car. A lot of people do. Not a lot of people can afford an electric car. Not a lot of people can afford to put solar panels and a charging station in their driveway. Solar panels on their roof. So we want to make this equitable for everybody so that we can do it. California just passed a new regulation, all new homes have to be solar powered.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, either through community solar or rooftop solar.
Right.
But they all have to be solar powered.
Nothing wrong with community solar.
Yeah, community solar is great. So we're seeing around the country a lot of things that are sort of moving this way, and a lot of different local communities, states are adopting various parts of this. So here in Maui County, we like to think of ourselves as progressives. So we really need to be progressive in our approach, and to start acting and moving now, even before we're not going to wait for the trickle down.
Well, the federal government is paralyzed, by
right
the business
now.
forces.
Exactly.
And so we have an opportunity here on the local level to actually institute some of these agendas and change.
Right.
And so that would be a county council measure that we talked about earlier that would stipulate
no new fossil fuel infrastructure.
that any infrastructure project that gets completed here in Maui County shall not be fossil fuel based.
Exactly. And we want to go farther than that, but one thing at a time, right? We'd love, rooftop solar. I know MECO says they have, grid issues. Well, we have grid technology now. Pay now or pay later. That's how we're looking. And a lot of, there are a lot of economic...
The technical solutions are available.
The technical solutions are available. It's just where we value, what we value, and where we're going to put our money, And we don't want to discriminate, certainly leaving people, on the grid, paying more for their grid service versus the people who, have gone off the grid, or have the deals like I have, basically where I sell back my overage to the county at the same rate that I buy at. It's great for me. It's not great for everybody. And so we have to work out some of that inequality and injustice and make it fair and equitable for everyone. So there's what the Green New Deal wants to do is 100% clean renewable energy by 2035, okay, which is 16 years off, okay, zero net emissions for the whole country by 2050. So that's zero emissions or total carbon capture, because as we talked about, I think in last week's show, pyrolysis does the carbon capture. So there are technologies that will do carbon capture. So that's kind of the definition of the zero net emissions.
So the recapture mechanisms, the recapture practices can draw down and bring that down to carbon neutral. So we're still emitting some carbons, but we're drawing them down just as well. Right.
Well, some of these technologies actually have carbon capture, so they're not emitting anything into the atmosphere. I don't know what they do with the carbon. Maybe they put it in the ground. I'm not sure. I know pyrolysis, it goes back into the ground.
Yeah. So in the form of biochar.
Right. I know lots about biochar.
Yeah,
I was very
fantastic
involved.
stuff.
Yeah. So another really big part of the whole climate conversation is energy efficiency, right? So making buildings more energy efficient, putting in regulations so buildings that are created are much more energy efficient than they were. You build a building, it's going to be around for 100 years. So we need to retrofit a lot of these buildings to make them more energy efficient, and we need stimulus in order to do that. So another aim of the Green New Deal is that 100% net zero building energy standards by 2030. Again, that's 16 years away. All buildings are going to be net zero emissions. So newer buildings are pretty close to that. I don't know what the percentage, I don't have statistics on that, but some of the older buildings are very, very energy inefficient. So these need to be retrofitted or sunsetted, and we have to make decisions about that. Another goal of the Green New Deal is 100% zero emission passenger vehicles by 2030. That means in 16 years, and people really, this is where it's really going to hit people, is, my car in 16 years, I have a fossil fuel burning, carbon beast. What am I going to do with it? in 16 years, and what are we going to do? How are we going to dispose of all these cars and make stimulus so everybody can get new cars?
Well, and the expectancy of a car can be much longer than 16 years.
Absolutely, I've got one.
People driving around in a '72 Ford Fairlane,
Right.
and so those cars, not only are they not safe, but they're also polluting the environment.
They're big polluters.
But you don't necessarily have the opportunity to force people to take those cars off the road.
Exactly. That's why we have to give them incentive to take those kinds of cars off the road.
We're going to buy back cars the way they bought back guns. We can buy back cars.
Just exactly the same way.
Right.
Yeah. And we're going to have a big, mountain of cars somewhere. So I don't know exactly all of the details of how we're going to recycle. We're going to recycle.
It's complicated stuff.
It's complicated
and that's
stuff.
why it's important to be moving in this direction and be going down this road so that we can have the dialogue and determine what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Right. Eventually all of those, gasoline-powered cars will be obsolete. Mm-hmm. So when is that going to be? It's when.
Who gets to decide and what do you do?
It's when. And there's so much innovation in electric vehicles right now. Lots of exciting new technologies in the EV field that we have to look forward to. So then also another goal of the Green New Deal is that by 2050 we're going to have 100% fossil-free transportation in aviation, heavy-duty vehicles and rail. Right, no more of those smokestack trains, which we don't have here, but they do on the mainland, and aviation fuel will be renewable. And I know that the Air Force has really done a lot of innovative work in the area of renewable aviation fuel. I'm not an expert, I can't talk about that, but that will be exciting because aviation fuel does pollute, and we have a lot of visitors here to Maui. So that's part of our carbon footprint here on Maui, is all of we have a tourist economy, we got people flying in, people flying out. So that's really going to help us with our carbon footprint here.
And locally we have the opportunity, once again, with the addition of hemp, being in the agricultural marketplace, there is an opportunity to, grow hemp for fuel purposes.
Absolutely.
In terms of rocket fuel, even there are aspects and chemicals that are in hemp that are very beneficial. They stabilize other oil products and other fuels.
Right.
So using what will be available, hope soon, can also revolutionize the energy field.
Yeah, right.
And have a big impact locally. We can knock down. We don't have to be importing all of this diesel.
Yeah, and what about right now? Of course, we can't replace all of the airplanes quickly, but we can require that they all have retrofits for energy efficiency. Some of those like wing, I forget what they are called. My brother's a pilot, he knows what it is, but there's things that they can do to the airplanes to retrofit them so that they're more energy efficient. And they can also mix the fuel with biofuels. They can't totally replace them, but they can mix. So we could make regulations here in Maui County that all of the planes coming in, or maybe it has to be done on a Hawaii state level. I'm not sure how much control we have over the airports.
Right.
We got that parking garage.
Zip. I don't think we have any control over the airports.
Yeah.
Oahu is driving the bus on that.
Right. Well, that's where we can be involved in a state level to get issues like that pushed through. So another piece of the Green New Deal is the matter that clean air and clean water is a right, not a privilege. Right, so the EPA, we know what they've done. They've eased all of the air quality standards and restrictions. It's bad. So
we have been with this current federal administration. We really are moving in the wrong direction.
Right.
That's part of the game that's being played. And how desperately they're holding on to the power that they have, and that's God willing, that's all going to change. Yeah.
Well, just creating the fuels releases so much methane. Like it's just sort of accidental release of methane. So Green New Deal is trying to reduce that methane leakage by 50% by 2025. Okay,
Yep.
so then we're talking 6 years, right? Because it can be done,
Right.
right? But nobody's asking or demanding that they do it.
You know,
yeah.
The dialogue isn't even there. They're not even talking about it.
So Green New Deal is also going to clean up our Water Act, right? So replacing all of the lead-based piping. So investing in water treatment facilities, and these are investments that the country is going to make, right? Investments. It's investment in our future, right? Investment in jobs. You know, it's like the New Deal. It was an investment in America. And so you know, there's going to be guaranteed access to affordable drinking water. Okay, I think it was somewhere in where was it, Arizona or Nevada, where the water cost got so high, maybe it was New Mexico, that 1 in 9 people couldn't pay their bill.
Couldn't pay their water bill.
Couldn't pay their water bill. Yeah, and that's not right.
No.
That is not right.
No.
I mean, we all need our drinking water. That's a right, not a privilege, you know. So other things.
Quickly, we're going to run out of time in this show,
No.
and we can come back in another.
I've got I can't believe I did that.
We can come back, Rita.
I could have gone on and on. I
Right,
always,
we can.
yeah, I know, you're gonna get so sick of me.
No, I mean, this is the whole point of having the show, is to be able to give, you know, a voice to these issues. So, you know, I invite you to come back, and we can actually segue and continue on into another episode.
Yeah.
So why don't we do that? We're going to wrap this show up. Next week, you're going to see the continuation of this discussion with Rita Ryan, talking about climate reality, and we will continue this discussion on how you can get involved locally and how you can get involved nationally and on the state level, and what you and your kids can do to protect our common future together. Thank you very much, Rita. Thank you very much for watching us here on Maui Causes.
Thank you, Sam.
And join us again. We'll be back. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.